Hello and welcome back guys. Today we are starting a new story titled, The Einherjar Pirates, written by Camdog2. Please find author story link in the description. And now let's begin the story. The start of something new. All systems are go doctor, you may proceed it. A female spoke. She was a young woman with wild light brown hair. She wears a pink full-body jumpsuit that bears her designation of Punk 02 on the left chest. She also wears a purple coat, purple boots, black gloves, and an earpiece and antenna on her left ear. Excellent work, Lilith. The test will begin immediately, came the excited voice from the doctor. He was a relatively tall elderly man with slender limbs and red cheeks. He has a noticeably elongated but neatly sliced head and has a driven in to support a structure resembling the top of an apple core and its leaf. His forehead is remarkably wide, his tongue is very long, while his eyes are close to his potato nose. He has a bald head on top, but has spiky white hair on the sides, as well as a thick mustache. He wears a short white coat with SSG on the back, a pink shirt with red polka dots, purple pants, and purple Doem shoes. Beginning the test now, Professor. An incredible tall girl shouted. She had a young appearance with floppy downward ear and a short curly hair that is white on the left and pink on the right. She has a very long curl of hair on each side of her head that runs down to her belly. She appears to have a long, bushy tail on her abdomen. She wears a short pink dress with her number on it as well as a downward pointing arrow on the front. She also wears pink boots, brown gloves with white sleeves attached. Excellent work, Atlas. Make sure to keep your eyes on everyone. Tesla's research was invaluable to getting this to work, and I'm not going to squander what he did for us, understand? The scientist shouted, getting a shout back. Yes, Dr. Vegapunk. We will begin now, Lilith. Slowly raise the power until the machine is working at maximum efficiency. Vegapunk requested, getting a nod from the evil aspect. Wish we had the others here with us though. Lilith thought, having wanted to wait for the other satellites to return to work on this. But Vegapunk was insistent on wanting to move forward as quickly as possible. Alright, now, let's begin the first test. Vegapunk said as he looked with both hope but also nervousness at what could be one of his crowning jewels. A teleportation device. For years he had been trying to succeed in getting this device to work on, to be met with a failure after failure with each attempt. But he couldn't give up, and he didn't, because of what his success would bring to the world. Getting supplies to war-torn countries, evacuating citizens from crisis while providing back to Marines and government agents that desperately need it. There was no end to the good that could come to the world once he had perfected this technology. The machine whirled to life, and as a low hum started to grow in tone and volume, hope began to bloom in Vegapunk's heart. Come on, you have to work. He muttered as he quickly pulled levers before typing commands on the keyboard. Power levels stable. Atlas remarked, her eyes unblinking as she read all the charts and instruments, looking for any signs of trouble. Test subjects are ready for transport as well. Lilith said as she used the monitoring to keep sight with what they would be trying to move, which was a simple toolbox. Alright then. Vegapunk said, sweat dropping down his massive forehead as he finished punching in commands. Is everyone ready? He asked the two satellites, who nodded. Well, he said with one final gulp. Let the experiment begin. An emerald green light shot high into the sky from the top of Punk Records. All systems stable on this end. Atlas said. Second transporter ready. She announced, getting a nod from Vegapunk as he quickly turned on the second one. Like the first, an emerald light shot high into the sky. Any changes, Lilith? Vegapunk questioned towards the evil aspect, who furrowed her brows. Nothing yet, sir. She muttered as she kept her eyes unblinking on the toolbox, which so far showed no changes. Come on, come on. She thought, frustrated. After a few seconds, however, her eyes lit up. Vegapunk, come quick. You'll want to see this. Lilith squealed with excitement as the man rushed over as fast as his legs could carry him. Is something happening? He asked with excitement coursing through him. Lilith just turned to him with a smile that he was sure matched his own. Just take a look for yourself, sir. she invented as Vegapunk looked towards the monitor. The monitor showed the toolbox slowly breaking down into the same green energy that was being launched into the sky before nothing remained, and a couple of seconds later the machine in the room they were currently in started to rattle as something started to materialize in its chamber. And after a few seconds of the three holding their breath before their very eyes, the toolbox appeared completely intact. It worked. Vegapunk muttered as if a trance before he threw his hands up high and shouted to the heavens. It really works. He cried, seeing the experiment actually be a success. Congratulations, Dr. Vegapunk. Atlas cheered rapidly, clapping her hands. I knew all those hours of research would pay off, she exclaimed, getting a happy nod of agreement from the scientist. So why isn't it turning off? At the sudden question the two turned and saw Lilith at the council, a frustrated look on her face as she tried to get the deceive to deactivate only for each command to be denied. DMN it, at this rate all of Egghead is going to go dark, she hissed as Vegapunk himself ran over to try and get the machines to go dark. Professor, you might want to have a look at this, Atlas said, having tried to monitor the beams only to notice what could only be described as a crack suddenly appeared in the sky. Seeing this, the three raced up to the top of the building and could only watch in growing horror as the cracks seemed to grow and grow more pronounced, with a dark purple glow coming from the cracks. What should we do, sir? Atlas pleaded, completely at a loss as more and more citizens were coming out to see what was going on. Vegapunk watched the sky for several seconds with sweat rolling down his face before his face became resolute. Shut down all power to the island immediately. I don't know exactly why the transporters aren't responding to commands, but they'll be harmless once all powers is cut and we can dismantle them. This would of course mean that Egghead would be without power for at least a few hours, but considering that his mistake seemed to be breaking apart the sky, it seemed to be the right call to make. Of course, Professor, Lilith said, taking out the deceive needed for such an act. To shut down power on Egghead, all of the satellites along with Vegapunk himself needed to put in each of their own security codes to completely the shutdown in the event an invader arrives and manages to take a satellite or Vegapunk himself hostage. Atlas and Vegapunk each took out their own devices, and to their relief they could see the other satellites already in the process of putting in their own security codes. Well, I'll be med. Even that slob York managed to get her butt up for this. Color me surprised, Lilith muttered underneath her breath. After placing in their security codes and a few tense sections, the entire island went dark and the beams of energy slowly faded. However, Vegapunk's eyes didn't leave the sky as his eyes kept on the cracks until finally, to their immense relief, the cracks started to fade. Right now, get in contact with the other satellites and tell them to get some of the vital buildings' power back as quickly as possible, Vegapunk ordered. It would still take an hour or two for the power to come back, but this way the vital buildings such as the hospitals and labs containing fragile and delicate experiments would be restored as soon as possible. Atlas gave a salute before running off to try and get the information to the other satellites. Lilith, head to the other transporter and scrap it. I don't care what you have to do, just make sure it doesn't turn on again once the power comes back on. I'll mange the one here, Vegapunk ordered, getting a nod from the evil aspect. However, before she could leave, something caught Lilith's eyes. That Vegapunk, look, she shouted as one of the cracks seemed to glow brighter and brighter before something seemed to burst from the cracks and sail through the air in an emerald arc just as the last of the cracks disappeared. Vegapunk and his two satellites watched as the object sailed through the sky until it disappeared over the horizon. What was that? Atlas muttered in awe as Lilith typed away on her device. No idea, but whatever it is, it's heading straight towards the north blue. The emerald streak soon faded, leaving Vegapunks to stand and wonder just what did they bring into this world. The screen now showed 3 marine warships sailing through the seas as a small storm raged around them, with a standard transport ship sailing bit behind them. However, it was clear that each of the warships had quite noticeable damage done to each of them. The ships themselves, it showed many marines battered and bruised and covered in various amounts of medical equipment. What a disaster! Momoga thought, his head wrapped in bandages and his arm in a sling. He's a man with a black mohawk and a mustache. He wears the standard marine uniform, consisting of a purple and white pinstripe suit with a coat draped over his shoulders, like. Underneath his coat lies a dark blue shirt and a light blue tie. He is of relatively tall height and very well built. He carries around his weapon of choice, a katana, either attached to his right hip or on his shoulder. To think we went at them with the force of a buster call and they managed to 7 of our ships by themselves. He muttered before reaching for his sword only to pull out a handle with a broken blade, to which he scowled and threw it away in disgust. I'm more troubled who we fought rather than the damage they caused. Vice Admiral Doberman spoke with bitterness, while beside him Vice Admiral Dalmatian scowled and clutched his fist in anger. Doberman has 4 X-shaped scars on his face and 2 on his neck, a split, curling mustache and brown flowing hair, reaching down to his shoulders. He has no pupil in his left eye. His marine coat, draped on his shoulders like a cape, is more elaborate than the ones worn by other high-ranking officers, and the stripes across his cap are in a zigzag pattern. Underneath his coat he sports an outfit composed of a loose shirt with rope-like ornaments on it and suit pants. Dalmatian, meanwhile, with his powers always active, takes the form of a muscular, bipedal Dalmatian-human hybrid. The top part of his head from his nose up and his arms and legs are that of a Dalmatian, a white dog with black spots all over the body. He also has a long tail. However, the bottom half of his face is human, just like most of Zoan users, and he has a blonde-white beard on a wide chin. His torso and neck also seem to remain human. He has yet to be seen in his default human or full Dalmatian forms. Like all other vice admirals and other high-ranking officers, he wears a double-chest suit, dress shirt, and a tie, with a marine jacket draped loosely over his shoulders like a cape. His suit, in particular, is dark green in color. He wears a light red shirt underneath, with a darker red tie. Both were injured, however neither showed signs of injuries as severe as Momoga's. The sting of betrayal is a harsh wound. Dalmatian muttered, his voice mixed with anger and sadness, a feeling shared by his fellow vice admirals. But unfortunately I can't say it was unexecuted. Vice Admiral Yamakagi interjected as he was being pushed to them in a wheelchair by a nurse. Yamakagi is a tall and broad-chested man. He has a slightly wrinkled face, a round nose with prominent nostrils, thick lips, and a wide, round chin. He has brown buzz-cut styled hair which connects to a thick beard that covers his entire chin. He is always seen with his eyes closed and with a cigar in his mouth. He is also often seen with a cheerful smile. He wears a dark brown double-chest suit with a black tie underneath, all over a yellow dress shirt with a red polka dot pattern. He also wears brown pants and brown shoes. Like most high-ranking officers, he drapes his standard marine coat over his shoulders like a cape. He also wears a standard marine cap. Momonga let out a sigh. When I heard what the Celestial Dragons were up to, I told Fleet Admiral Sengoku I wanted no part in it. He told the other vice admirals, who grunted in agreement. But if I knew the exact details I would have done everything I could to try and stop it. Especially after everything Admiral Leonitis had done for us. On top of him, Vice Admiral Brunhild and Vice Admiral Gyrolul went rouge with him. Doberman reminded them with a grimace. Though that's not that surprising. Given that Gyrolul was Leonitis's student, while both Leonitis and Brunhild has always shown their hatred for the Celestial Dragons openly. Dalmatian added on. Excuse me, sirs. A meek female voice spoke up hesitantly as the 4 men turned to see a newcomer hesitantly approach. Yes, Gal, what DOD you need? Dalmatian asked, seeing their newest recruit walk up to them. Sorry to bug you, sirs. I was just wondering about the prisoners. I've heard rumors for sure about Adam, former Admiral Leonitis, but nothing concrete and next to nothing about the other 2. And I'd appreciate a little information of you, sirs. She requested, with the 4 looking at each other before looking back at the cabin girl who squirmed under their combined gaze. With a resigned sigh, Momonga nodded. Very well, young one. He said as Gal leaned forward eagerly to hear this. To begin, Leonitis comes from a country that is not allied with the world government. It's known as Sparta, and the whole island is basically one giant city. Momoga began his explanation. Wait, so how did he end up joining the Marines? Gal asked, getting a small smirk from Dalmatian. It's all thanks to Vice Admiral Garp. He was near Sparta when it was fighting off some invading pirates and intervened. Admiral Leonitis was so impressed and inspired that he immediately enlisted and was taken by Garp as his personal student. Gal's eyes lit up in awe. Really, Vice Admiral Garp? The cabin girl shouted, having never heard of the hero of the Marines taking a student. Yamakiji nodded. It's true, and from the rumors I heard it was nothing short of utter hell for Admiral Leonitis. Running drills until he passed out on his feet, using our retired battleships as their sandbags. I think I even heard about Garp tying his legs together and throwing him into a ravine and Leonitis having to climb out with just the strength of his arms. The wheelchair-bound Vice Admiral managed a smirk. And through it all, Admiral Leonitis never complained, just kept grinning madly and in defiance as his strength and experience grew more and more. Gal was shaking and a little pale at hearing this. Well, that seems a bit overkill. She managed to squeak out while shaking slightly. That may be true, but it did help him rise in the ranks until at the age of 22 he had reached the rank of Vice Admiral, making him the youngest in history. Dalmatian continued on a note of pride in his voice at the accomplishment. Doberman, however, gave a frown as he took the next bit. However, his rise to fame came 25 years. During the Battle of Ed War. Battle of Ed War. Gal repeated, having never heard of that before. Momoga nodded. Ed refers to a sea in the New World, and one where the Golden Lion pirates were supposed to have a meeting with the Roger pirates. Momoga revealed, getting a gasp of shock from Gal, who had never heard of that event. However, that meeting never happened, Yamakiji told the girl. For some reason or another Roger never showed. He muttered as he glanced towards the sea. However, at the time when he was a Vice Admiral, Leonitis decided to take advantage of the situation and being stationed close by at the time. So, going against orders, Leonitis stole a ship and sailed out alone to meet the Golden Lion and his armada. Honestly, none of us thought we were ever going to see him again. Such a student was nothing short of suicide. Momoga exclaimed as it cut back to them with Gal gulping in fright. So what happened? Obviously Admiral Leonitis survived, but how exactly was he able to get away or something? She questioned, and Dalmatian actually snorted. Get away. Admiral Leonitis doesn't know the meaning of retreat. He laughed before shaking his head. No, that truth is even more unbelievable. He told her before straightening up with pride, as did the rest. Vice Captain. He won. The scene changed again to the battle again, as a figure was seen jumping into there and onto an enemy ship, casing a massive explosion and the ship to sink. Pirates were yelling and charging while the others were firing guns as the figure charged forward as more explosions followed. The battle was long and brutal, but eventually it all came down to Shiki and Leonitis. It now showed a young-looking Shiki and the figure still hidden, but could only be Leonidas standing across from each other before charging forward. Shiki raised his swords, but Leonitis managed to dodge before kicking Shiki away, who only stumbled slightly before charging again. By the end of it, both were near death, but eventually the figure Leonidas, who was clutching a wound, managed to straighten up, change forward, his fist raised high while Shiki charged to meet him. The final result was the two blades going straight through the Vice Admiral. Leonidas' assault didn't stop as he rammed his fist into Shiki's face, a mighty crack being heard before the pirate was launched back and slamming into his destroyed ship. The steering wheel, which had been laying harmlessly on the ground, implanted itself into his head. Leonidas emerged victorious. Admiral Leonitis destroyed an entire fleet. Gal shouted in total awe at such an accomplishment. Doberman nodded. Indeed, though don't misunderstand. He was mere inches from death's door and spent a month unconscious after days of ongoing surgeries. Doberman explained, not wanting the girl to be under the impression it was an easy fight. It was also due to the fact that he was able to awaken his devil fruit and advance his haki during the fight. I have no doubt that had that not happened, Leonitis would have fallen in during that battle. Momonga further explained with Gaul tilting her head at the part of Devil Fruit Awakening and Hockey part and made a note to ask later. Wow, so Admiral Leonitis was the one who put Shiki away for good. She marveled and missed the troubled looks from the vice admirals. It was after this event that earned Leonitis the rank of admiral, and for the last quarter of a century inspired countless marines who were inspired by Admiral Leonitis, the Black Ram and his rebellious justice. Dalmatian finished with a smirk of pride on his face as he spoke of his friend and fellow marine. As for Vice Admirals Brunhild and Gyrolol, their stories are more simple. Gyrolol joined Leonitis and quickly rose through the ranks until she was his right-hand woman. She and Leonitis are similar in so many ways, both filled with pride and quick to anger whenever they're looked down on. Momonga shuddered at the memory of some of her rampages. However, what they had the most in common was their choice of weapons. Leonitis was almost always seen with a shield and spear, while Gyrolol went into combat with 2 spears. Dalmatian explained as it showed a woman hidden in shadows, a deranged smile on her face as she held 2 spears. As for Brunhild, she was found and taken in by Vice Admiral Tsuru when she was a child. Raised along with Rear Admiral Kajaku, she proved herself to be a natural-born strategist, having been taught by the woman herself. That and her devil fruit has gained her the title of the Valkyrie, Yamakaji explained as another woman hidden in shadows were shown her back to the screen, but her head turned just enough for everyone to see her confident smirk. After their explanation, Gaul was in complete awe. To think the Marines had people so amazing in their ranks. She thought with her respect of the 3 growing and growing. So what happened? Gaul couldn't help but question. Why did such amazing Marines throw away everything by going up against the Celestial Dragons? She, like everyone in the world, hated the Celestial Dragons and the cruelty they showed to the world, and like many wished she could do something to take them down once and for all. The 4 vice admirals gave each other unsure glances as they noticed that by now many of the other Marines were listening in to the conversation. Deciding it was to just bite the bullet, Dalmatian decided to answer. The Celestial Dragons were planning on starting something that hasn't been held in nearly 36 years. One that they tried to start again 20 years ago, but due to a certain incident was called off due to another incident. Gaul could only blink in confusion at such the vague answers. Okay, but what was that event? Gaul asked, and Momonga opened his mouth to answer when something caught his attention. What is that? He asked, questioned as he turned and saw an emerald streak hurtling through the sky right towards them. Many of the soldiers started to panic, shouting about bracing for impact while trying to finding the best place to hunker down, frustrating the vice admirals. Compose yourselves. Doberman roared so everyone could hear him. Stop running around like children and prepare for battle. I don't know what that thing is, but if it proves to be hostile, I want it taken down immediately. He roared as many of the soldiers looked incredibly nervous but gulped as they went to their proper battle stations. You two, get Yamakuji somewhere safe. Momoga ordered, to which he quickly protested. Who do you think you are, Momoga? I'm not so weak I'll let something like this stop me. He shouted in defiance, with Momonga glaring back. Do not argue, you are in no condition to fight right now and would only be a hindrance to us. He told the cigar smoker before looking towards him pleadingly. Please. We've already lost Shatan during this operation, I don't want to lose another friend. The man pleaded towards the injured vice admiral. He speaks the truth, Yamakuji, but at the same time that goes for you as well, Momonga. Doberman informed the mustached man. Your arm's broken and you're without your weapon. You'd be a liability right now and one we don't need. He spoke, his eyes never leaving the thing hurtling towards them. Momonga grunted but nodded as he started towards the interior of the ship, while Gaul took hold of Yamakuji's wheelchair and wheeled him in after the mustached man. With that, both remaining vice admirals were able to give their full attention to the projectile. So what is it we're dealing with exactly, do you think? Dalmatian asked, raising his hands to fight as the object was getting closer and closer until the entire area was covered in an emerald green glow. Not sure. Doberman asked as he raised his sword. But we need to be on guard no matter what it is. And with that, the object slammed straight into the deck of the center deck. At the ready. Doberman shouted as the Marines drew their swords and prepared their guns. As the smoke covered whatever it was that had just crash-landed. As the smoke started to clear, they could already make out a humanoid form through the smoke, and they appeared to holding something. "Identify yourself," Doberman demanded again as the Marines readied their swords and guns. The response they get, however, was a pressure slamming down on them, knocking many of the Marines unconscious as green lightning seemed to emit for their form. HAKI. Both vice admirals thought, sweating under the pressure as the smoke finally started to clear. As the smoke cleared, the figure could finally be seen. He was a heavily built and muscular young man with green spiky hair and emerald green eyes. In one hand was a mighty-looking axe. In his other hand, however, was what drew much more attention, which was a severed head of a man with snow-white hair, red eyes, and dry and wrinkled skin. Seeing the head in the hand of the stranger caused the Marines to tense up even more as they began to shake, though the vice admirals kept their cool as they watched the man look around, his eyes going wide while muttering under his breath, and when he caught sight of Doberman and Dalmatian, a look of pure disbelief hit his face. Vice Admiral Dalmatian and Doberman. He muttered in disbelief, causing the two to briefly glance at each other. "Indeed, now identify yourself," Doberman ordered, causing the stranger to sigh and open his mouth. However, before he could start, a message came over the Den Sushi. "Attention all ships in the area. Be on the lookout for an unidentified object hurtling through the sky. It is to be secured and brought to Navy headquarters. Use any amount of force required to bring it in." The message called, and suddenly the entire ship went silent as the Marines and stranger just stared at each other. Dalmatian just looked to the stranger with pity in his eyes, but still got into a fighting stance. "Well, you heard him. You're to come with us to Marine Ford. Luckily we were heading there anyway," he told the stranger as Doberman raised his sword. "So will you come with us peacefully, or will you force us to use force?" Doberman questioned. The young man just sighed, "DMN Marines," before absently tossing the head lazily towards Doberman, who knocked it aside only for the stranger to appear inches away from him and slamming his fist into face, sending him flying off the ship and crashing into the battleship that was sailing beside them. Dalmatian charged forward with a roar as he swiped wildly at him, only to dodge each one before blocking with his axe. The stranger then delivered a kick to Dalmatian's legs, forcing him down before backhanding him away. "Capture him," a Marine captain ordered as Marines each charged forward or shot at him. The stranger ducked and waved around the bullets effortlessly, and as they were reloading, the Marines with bladed weapons charged at him from all sides and even some from the air. The stranger just glanced around, bored, before twitching his hand. The Marines felt something impact their weapons before each and every one of them were cut to pieces. The Marines on the ship shouted in fear as they dropped the remains of their weapons and scrambled back. "Devil fruit powers," the same captain shouted as each of the Marines moved to get some distance while two of the cannons were all aiming at him now. "Stand down now or be fired upon," a Marine ordered, though it was clear he was nervous. The stranger raised his hand as if surrendering before once again flicking his fingers, and a moment later the cannons were destroyed. "DMN it, what is that power?" Dalmatian shouted as he and Doberman had recovered by now and were once again charging towards the stranger. As for the green-haired man, he hurled his weapon towards them, but the two vice admirals dodged it easy. Doberman and Dalmatian went in for another attack, which the stranger dodged by twisting his body back. However, then he extended his arm and opened his hand. There was a whirling sound, and to their disbelief the axe sailed back into his hands. The two men's eyes widened at the sight, but that turned to be a mistake as the stinger used the moment to twist back upright, slashing Dalmatian clear across the chest as well as Doberman, slicing apart the scared man's sword. Seeing the action as well as the vice admiral's drop caused shouts of panic to ring out all over the ship. "DMN it, what do we do now?" one of the captains demanded frantically, only to get slapped by a rear admiral. "Pull yourself together, man, and look at him," he ordered as they looked to the invader, who was breathing heavy. "It's clear he's still exhausted from whatever fight he just came from," he noted as he saw state the young man was in, and grimaced slightly at severed head laying in the corner. "He's right. Dalmatian said as he shakily stood up while clutching his chest as Doberman managed to stand up straight and draw his pistol. We just have to push him enough until exhaustion puts him out of commission. Doberman planned, his eyes shining with resolve. Dalmatian was in complete agreement. Prepare to engage. He ordered, getting cheers from the Marines as more of the cannons were now aimed directly at the young man who could only sigh. Really stepped in it this time. He muttered before looking at the cannons that were ready to fire, resulting in the stranger to shake his head. Can't be helped, I guess. And fire. A Marine over the loudspeaker ordered as cannonball flew through the air on both sides, with Marines watching this and hope it'll be enough to finish the fate. The cannonball seemed to be moving in slow motion as they approached, whose only response was to roll his eyes. Good grief, was all he said before going into horse stance and throwing a punch with each fist, resulting in cracks in the air to appear on either side of him. The shock waves tore through the ship and impacted the cannonball, sending them flying back towards the cannon, with the cannons going up in flames. The Marines screamed in horror as they tried to put out the flames, as Dalmatian actually dropped to his butt in shock. That was the tremor fruit. He shouted in full panic mode. But that's Whitebeard's fruit. How does this brat have it? I have no idea, but it looks like we got our chance. Doberman shouted, seeing the stranger drop to his knees. Dalmatian and Doberman took their chance and after hockeying up their limbs before slamming their first into the young man's chest, bringing him down. The stranger's vision went blurry as he glanced towards the two vice admirals, even as his vision began to fade. Fun's over, brat. Dalmatian roared, and with one final kick knocked the kid unconscious as the screen faded to black. When the scene came back, it showed the stranger laying in the brig of the battleship, his arms and legs chained to the wall. The stranger grunted as he regained consciousness. Slowly he sat up as he rubbed his head. Where am I? He questioned as he looked around. Last thing I remember was finishing off Shigaraki, and then there was this light, and then, he trailed off before his eyes widened as he recalled what happened after the sudden light that hit him faded. Izuku. He groaned. You have really stepped in it this time. The now named Izuku grunted as he scraped the back of his head in annoyance. Izuku turned his head to see the sun just over the horizon. So it's either sunset or sunrise. He muttered before his stomach grumbled. From the sounds of it, sunrise. He muttered before shaking his head. I can worry about food later. There's more important than food right now. Izuku closed his eyes as he activated his haki. There's 2 more warships out there and a ton of more Marines. He thought with a frown. This is going to make things difficult. Izuku thought before his eyes drifted towards the 5 Marines that were guarding his cell. Samson, Patrick, Abe, Jonathan, Marcus. He greeted the 5 Marines, who stiffened up at them being called by name. "Q, quiet, criminal." Marcus shouted, holding up his gun. "Those are prison stone cuffs you're wearing. There's no escaping for you," Marcus declared, trying to put on a confident smirk only for it to die as Izuku to chuckle. "Well, just be careful with that gun. We don't want that bum leg of yours to give out thanks to the recoil," the boy told the Marine, who began to shake as he grew more and more rattled. "I said quiet." Marcus screamed, his hands started to tremble. However, before he could make another move, a loud laugh came from the cell to Izuku's right, surprising everyone including Izuku. How the hell did I know sense him? Izuku roared in his head. What's the matter, Marcy? Don't tell me you're psing yourself because a kid knows your name and about your condition. He laughed as Marcus went red with embarrassment and the other Marines looked at each other unsure. Izuku, however, was in shock. The voice. I don't recognize it at all. Izuku didn't have time to process this, however, as the man seemingly turned his attention. Hey boy, what's your name? He asked, and Izuku, after a moment of hesitation, answered. Izuku Midoriya. He told the stranger. Ah, nice name, you can call me Leonitis. He introduced himself with Izuku gasping. Leonitis, like the king of Sparta, Leonitis. He thought before shaking his head. No, can't be, probably just a giant coincidence. He tired to rationalize. Anyway, Izuku, what's your story? How'd you end up as a resident on this fine ship of ours? He asked, with Izuku thinking it over before glancing towards the Marines who were listening intently. I was fighting in a war. Izuku began his tale. For the last year and a half I was enrolled in a school where I was training to be a soldier for my country. Not the complete truth, but one that would do for now. The war was brief, but it completely destroyed our country, and it was led by the man whose head I was holding and his army of living corpses. Izuku explained as the Marines shivered at the reveal while Leonitis clicked in disgust. When I finally killed the BSTRD, I thought it was done, only for some light to shine upon me. Next thing I know, I'm here fighting for my life and chained to the wall. Izuku finished, getting a laugh from Leonitis. Not bad, kid, not bad at all. He told him, getting a shrug from the green-haired teen. What about you? How'd you end up here? Izuku questioned. Not much to tell, actually. I was a Marine and I was proud of it. Then the Celestial Dragons forced me to make a choice, my career or my home. I choose my home and I stand by it. Leonitis declared, getting a nod from Izuku, the respect for the man growing. So what's your plan, kid? I mean, things are looking pretty grim right now, but should you get the chance, what do you plan to do? Leonitis asked, and that left Izuku stuck. What can I do? It's not like I can just fly or warp home. He thought a little helplessly as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Absently, Izuku turned his head towards the Marines watching him. Poor BSTRDS. He thought, they have no idea what's about to happen, and they look like they're right around the ages they were when dash. Eyes wide, Izuku bolted straight up and turned frantically towards the Marines, who flinched back at the sudden moment. The date. What's today's date? Izuku asked them, causing them to look at each other. Why do you dash? Just tell me DMN it. Izuku ordered, causing them to scream. It's May, they screamed in unison. And the year? Izuku asked, with Marcus quickly giving that out as well. Izuku sat there thinking. If that really is the date, then I might have my way home. Izuku thought as his mind started going a million miles a minute as an image flashed through his mind. The Grail. It's a couple years too early for it to be used, but if I can get to it. Izuku muttered before grunting in resignation. But it's my best option right now. Izuku thought before letting out a sigh. Would you believe me if I said I was going to go after the One Piece? Izuku asked, getting a hum from Leonitis. So you're going to become a pirate? He asked a little tensely. Izuku grunted. I was thinking more of a bounty hunter, treasure hunter thing, but let's face it, the second they discover I'm after the One Piece, the government's gonna slap the pirate label on me. Though it's not like it's gonna matter once I break out of here. Izuku admitted, getting a laugh from Leonitis as the Marine started to sweat more. Why, you're not going anywhere. Jonathan tried to be brave, said, only getting a bored look from Izuku as Leonitis asked his next question. So who are you gonna target during this little hunt of yours? You're going to need a top-notch crew if you want to survive the new world and gather the One Piece, and anyone worth their weight isn't going to be cheap. So what's the plan to make money? Leonidas asked, and Izuku could hear the warning in his voice. There was more to this question than first appeared, and it all depended on how Izuku answers. Izuku humphed as he leaned against the wall. I've got 3 groups that I'm willing to attack, Izuku said as he held up 3 fingers, even though the older man couldn't see it. First is obviously other pirates. They choose to go out to sea for a life of riches and thus putting themselves at risk for those riches to be plundered as well. Second are Marines that are stupid enough to attack us. I don't plan to go after the brave men and women who choose to protect the world, but that doesn't mean I won't take advantage if they try and capture us. And the third, well, that's reserved for the Celestial Dragons. Those piece of septic SHT don't give a SHT about anyone, and it's time some starts tearing them down from their thrones. Especially that one. Izuku inwardly scowled as an image popped into his head. Leonitis went silent for a few seconds before speaking next. So you don't plan to attack civvies? Leonitis questioned, wanting to make absolutely sure. Of course I don't. There's no reason to attack anyone other than those three groups. Izuku confirmed before giving a second thought. Well, them corrupt rulers and government officials, but I don't really think they count. Izuku told the older man, who let out a laugh. Can't say that I do either. Well then kid, what's our escape plan? Leonitis asked, causing Izuku to blink. Our? Izuku asked, with Leonitis giving an unseen nod. Yup, I've decided I'm joining your crew as the vice captain. Leonitis declared, causing Izuku to blink in surprise while the Marines let out a terrified "ee." So you're joining my crew? Izuku asked. Yup. And I'm pretty sure I can convince the other two prisoners in this little trip of ours as well. Leonitis said with certainty. That right? Izuku asked before he grinned. Well then let's get on with it. Izuku said as he opened up his hand. A few seconds later there was a commotion a few floors below and the 5 Marines looked around nervously. Seconds later the axe Izuku had earlier broke through the floor, causing the 5 Marines to scream as they turned their attention to it. This turned out to be a mistake as Izuku took the chance to stand and rush towards them, phasing through his sea prison cuffs. The Marines turned back just in time for Izuku to slam into 3 of them, sending them flying before grabbing the other 2 and slamming their heads together and knocking them unconscious. The hell was that? Did you just break? I thought they had you in sea prison cuffs. Leonitis muttered, getting a chuckle from Izuku. Just because I have devil fruit powers doesn't mean I'm affected by the sea. Whatever you say. Leonitis grinned. Not stop footing around and get me out of here. He barked, with Izuku quickly rushing over to the next cell and phasing through the bars, allowing him to get his first glimpse of his new vice captain. As Izuku approached him he created a set of keys. So you sure you want to do this, becoming the very thing you used to hunt? Izuku asked as he undid the man's restraint. Yeah, not like I've got much of a future with these guys anyway. Leo said, getting a nod from Izuku. Well then. Izuku Midoriya, newly made pirate captain. Izuku introduced himself, with Leonitis grinning. Leonitis of Sparta, former admiral and newly made vice captain. He introduced himself and Izuku felt his eyes go wide and he had to stop himself from openly gaping. Still Izuku managed to snap out of his funk and extend his hand to help Leo up, which the man happily took. However, when he did so a green energy covered their hands before shooting up Leonitis's arm. The hell was that? Izuku questioned as Leo shrugged. Probably nothing. Might be our powers, might be something with hockey. We'll deal with it later if we have to. He waved it off, getting a nod from Izuku. Well then, what do you say we get this prison break started and raise some hell? Izuku offered, with Leonitis grinning a savage grin. I say lead the way, boss. Jailbreak. It was pure pandemonium as the newly made pirate crew of 2 raced through the halls of the ship. So you sure your weapon is in lockup? Izuku asked as they followed the destruction Izuku's axe created while flying through the ship. Sure of it. We just gotta get there and then we can go bust out the others before starting our crew in earnest. Leonitis told his new captain. The Marines did their best to stop them, but their methods proved fruitless. Thought that didn't mean the Marines quit. Come on, keep firing, something has to bring them down. A captain shouted, firing shot after shot towards the 2. Most of the shots did actually hit Izuku, but to his horror the bullets just bounced off him. What is he made of? The captain thought, only to go sailing through the air after being shoulder-topped by Leonitis. Sorry pal. He called out before hearing the clicking of readying rifles from behind him. Turning he saw Momonga standing there with 20 riflemen ready to fire. Former Admiral Leonitis. Stand down immediately. Momonga ordered, though he was sweating quite a bit as he tried to keep his nerves under control. Leonitis only smirked as he kicked up a gun of the floor and into his hands. Sorry Momonga. He said, his body starting to glow while as projections of gunmen appeared around him. But it's going to be a no. Leonitis and the gun fired their bullets, each landing hits on the Marines, sending them to the floor groaning in pain as they clutched the spots that had been wounded. Momonga growled before using his one good arm picked up a sword as he tired to rally the Marines. Do not falter, men. In the name of justice, we will bring him down. Momonga roared as he and 4 other Marines picked up their swords and charged. Izuku, who had just taken down the rest of the Marines, watched with interest. So that's his power. Izuku thought, his eyes wide before laughing. Well, it fits him at least, as he watched the Marines close in on Leo. The man simply raised his hand. Shields. He roared as a dome of shields manifested around the former Marine, shattering the swords upon impact, causing the Marines to gasp in disbelief. And now, Leonitis said as he raised index and middle fingers, a green energy shining in his eyes. Spears. The Marines shouted in pain as spears manifested and impaled them with such force at the Marine's back. DMN it. One of the Marines cursed as he clutched his side. Just what kind of power is that? He demanded, getting a grin from Leo. Oh this. He asked as the green glow faded a little but was still prominent. It's the army fruit. I ate it and became an army man. I can manifest and control almost anything that has to do with an army. From weapons to soldiers, I can summon and control them. He explained as tossed the gun in the arm and grabbed it by the barrel. And now with our lesson over, he said before disappearing. The Marines looked around frantically, but only Momonga, whose observation hockey alerted him, was able to move in time. Bam bam bam, the 4 other Marines dropped to the ground as Momonga struggled to stand, having a spear gone through both his legs and unbroken shoulders. Why? He asked, needing to know the answer. I can understand protecting your home and breaking out those that assisted you. But why choose to be a pirate of all things? Momonga needed to ask, having known the man for decades in his unwavering belief in rebellious justice. Leonitis just hummed as he stared at the man. I didn't choose to become a pirate. Leonitis told the Marine before pointing over towards Izuku. I choose to follow this guy. He's the one who decided on becoming a pirate. Leonitis clarified, getting a grunt from Momonga. And what is so special about that child? Is it the hockey or the fact he has multiple devil fruits? Momonga said, and although Izuku was quite large and muscular, the Vice Admiral knew the child could be no more than 19 or 20, barely a man by the world standard. Leonitis glanced over towards Izuku and gave him a glance before looking back. Nah, it's nothing like that. Leo said before giving a shrug. Guess I just decided to take a chance and I'm just waiting to see how it turns out. Leonitis admitted, getting a groan from the mustached man. Well then, you're aware I can't just let you go walking round, right? He asked as he tried to steady himself, getting a grin. I know, Maman. That stubbornness is one of the things I'm going to miss about you. He said before disappearing once again. This time the Vice Admiral couldn't dodge in time, so Leonitis, the green glow back in his eyes, was able to grab him by the head with a throw, send him hurtling through several walls on the ship. Kinda overkill, don't you think? Izuku asked with a raised eyebrow, especially since up till now he and Leo have tried to keep injuries to a minimum. Leonitis seemed to freeze for a moment as once again the green light faded before looking towards his hand. Why did I dash? He muttered before trailing off. Izuku regarded him for a moment and thought he saw a glow on Leo's shoulder before shaking the thought away. Anyway, we should be right over the lock-up, ready to smash through it. He asked, raising his fist, as it was waiting to destroy the floor. Izuku offered him a smirk. As fun as that would be, I've got another idea. Izuku said as he crouched down before placing his hand on the floor. Now open door policy. Izuku thought as he used the door fruit to create an opening to the floor below. Wow. Leonitis muttered as he dropped to the floor. So he's got the bull's power too. He thought as they two landed in the lockup. Another power, huh? Couldn't have saved us some time, instead of fighting through the Marines. Leonitis pointed out, getting a grunt from Izuku. We would have needed to fight through them anyway. Better sooner rather than later, I say. The captain challenged, getting a nod from the older point. See your point. He relented before looking around. Now let's get my gear. He muttered as the two went about looting the place. Okay, what exactly are we looking for exactly? Izuku said with Leonitis grunting. My spear. Leo told the younger man, who nodded before they effectively tore the room apart. For several minutes the two men tore apart the room, finding several different weapons and other treasures which Izuku stored away for later. Well, at least we won't be starved for cash for a while. Izuku thought as he put another few 100,000 berry away before looking over towards Leonitis. It's starting to look like your gear isn't here. Izuku told him before looking around. We're running out of places a spear can be held. Izuku noticed, with the older man waving it off. Don't worry. It's definitely here. Leo reassured him as he looked through the room, though it was clear he was getting more and more annoyed. Where the hell did those BSTRDS put it? He thought while holding back a growl. It didn't help that for the last few minutes he's been hearing a strange ringing in his ears. Though it sounded less like ringing and more like a savage chanting. Wah, wah, wah. Leonitis shook his head to try to ignore it as he rummaged through everything. Taking out everything so Izuku could store it away, until finally he saw something tucked away neatly in the corner. Ah-ha! Leo laughed as he grabbed it. Got him! He declared in triumph. Take a look, this boss. Leo declared to Izuku, who wanted to see what kind of spear a former admiral would use. And Izuku would admit, they weren't what he expected. Leo noticed Izuku's confused expression and just chuckled. Yeah, that's the look everyone first gives. But just give me a minute and I'll show you something great. He swore just as though the sound of shouting and footsteps were coming from the hall. Yeah, well, make it fast. Izuku said as he drew his axe. We've got about 10 seconds before our next fight starts. Izuku muttered as Leonitis put on both items. There were a few clicking sounds as the ring and bracelet transformed before Izuku's eyes, and within 3 seconds Leonitis was now armed with a spear. Izuku blinked as he tried to process what just happened, while Leo's grin just got wider. Dr. Vegapunk really knows how to make the impossible possible, eh? He asked just as a group of heavily armored Marines arrived, all armed with heavily armed rifles. Alright, that's enough, you two. Return to your cells or gack. The speaking Marine was cut off as Leonitis's spear stuck him in the chest, his armor being the only thing that kept him from being killed. My spear ate the rep fruit. As long as I have the ring on, I can make an endless amount of replicas of my spear. Leo explained before the two turned to see the Marine scrambling to get his armor off. Quick before it explodes. One of them screamed frantically, causing Izuku to blink. Explode. Izuku thought before noticing the spearhead was still lodged in the armor. Izuku turned towards the older man, who merely shook his head and muttered. Later. By now the man had managed to get his armor off and he wiped sweat from his brow. DMN, that was close. He muttered before glaring towards the two criminals before turning to his own men. What the hell are you waiting for? Fire. The Marines snapped to attention, but before they could pull the trigger, ice was speeding towards them and quickly up their pants leg before spreading towards their arms and weapons. The Marines screamed as they scrambled back to get away from the ice, some losing parts of their pants and shirts in the process. However, everyone lost their guns, which after being encased in ice shattered upon hitting the floor. A few seconds later their bodies hit the ground along with their armor shattering as Leo and Izuku quickly dispatched the rest of the armored division. Well, looks like that's the last of them for now. Leonitis muttered, only to turn his head down the passageway where the sounds of more foot stomps were already thundering towards them. Or maybe not. He deadpanned, though the green glow did return to his eyes. Well then, let's get moving. Izuku suggested as lightning surged over his arm, which was raised in the air, and a moment later lightning shot through the air and tearing through the ship as the Marines above shrieking in absolute horror as they jumped to avoid the column of death. Well then, ready to get this fight really started. Izuku gasped, getting a grin from Leonitis as the two skywalked to the deck of the ship. However, what Izuku didn't know was that the chanting was back in Leonitis's head, and it was louder and more clear than before. Wah! Wa! Wa! Aggaf. By the time the two made it to the deck, sirens were already blaring and shouts were ranging all around them. The two were surrounded almost instantly, and while most were quite nervous, Doberman and Dalmatian were there up front to lead the charge. Dalmatian was growling before he briefly glanced towards Doberman. "I told you it was a mistake to keep the prisoners close tighter." The Zoan user grumbled, with the scared Vice Admiral letting out a puff of smoke as he sighed. Yeah. He muttered as he drew a new blade. "Let's go fix that mistake then," he said as the two Vice Admiral charge. Dalmatian went after Leo with a swipe towards the former Marine, who blocked with his shield before delivering a kick to the man's kick chest, sending the man hurtling a few feet back. The dog fruit user recovered quickly and, with a quick shave, reappeared right in front of Leonitis. "Now finger pistol," Dalmatian declared, shooting his finger forward ready to impale the older man. Crunch, only to jerk it back to see the finger bent back at an unnatural angle as spluttered out. Leonitis chuckled as his eyes now glowing a bright green. "Sorry pal, but your finger pistol has a long way to go before it can even scratch my iron body," he declared before pulling his fist back and smashing it straight into the VA's face, sending him soaring through the air and onto the deck of the ship to the far right. The whirling of cannons reached his ears as the cannons from the two closest ships started to aim their cannons towards their ship. "DMNBSTRDS." The former admiral growled to himself in anger. Leonitis has always hated that the Marines would sacrifice their own without a second thought and would never allow it under his command. It also didn't help that the roaring was louder than ever. "Wayag, DMN it." Leonidas hissed underneath his breath as he ran towards one of the cannons before shaving over and landing on it. "Take aim, men," a lieutenant shouted as everyone started to aim their guns towards their enemy. "Stop," a rear admiral shouted, his face pale. "Aim for the cannon instead. We've got to destroy it," he ordered frantically. This order startled the other Marines, but it gave Leonitis enough time to crouch down and place his arm on the cannon. Too late. He grinned as the cannon began to glow. And then, to Marine's horror, the cannon started to move. The cannon on the left extended to the left while the one of the right moved to the right as the center one shot up. The Marines were shaking in horror as they watched one of their cannons become something entirely different. Now stop, a giant humanoid figure made of metal with a cannon on each arm and a third on its head. The living army. The most basic of the awakened techniques of the army fruit. Allowing the user to turn any non-living thing into a soldier. Leonitis thought as the Marines beamed to fire helplessly at it. The giant turned its attention to its attackers, but before it could retaliate, Leo spoke up. "None of that," the former admiral shouted before gesturing around. "Your job is to take out all the other cannons, got it?" he told the living weapon, who immediately turned to the nearest cannon, raised one of its arms and fired. Boom! A massive fireball erupted from where the cannon used to be as the Marines scrambled to out the fire. "And now gunmen and swordsmen," Leonitis called as two figures, 10 holding rifles and 10 holding swords, manifested around the giant. The gunmen instantly went to work shooting guns out of the hands of all the Marines, while the swordsmen went against the close combatants. With the cannons seemingly taken care of and the giant defeated, Leonitis was able to turn his attention to Izuku. And he saw the fight was going well. Doberman was breathing heavily now, holding 2 new swords, his first having been shattered with several streaks of running down his face. Still, the man held his ground and went for another charge, bringing both blades down for a slash, only for it to be blocked by Izuku's axe. "What is it made of?" Doberman thought to himself, frustrated as he tried to break through. However, Izuku wasn't giving an inch and decided to go on the counterattack. Using the power of the strong fruit, Izuku was able to easily break the stalemate with so much force that it caused Doberman to stumble back. Not wasting a moment and using the power of the glint fruit, a dagger of light appeared in the young man's hands, which he quickly used to stab the VA in the side. To Doberman's credit, he didn't so much as blink at the attack and immediately went for a swing of his swords, only for Izuku to leap back and store away his axe before sprouting 2 arms on both his left and right side before turning all 30 fingers into pistols. The bullets rained down on the scared man, who deflected the best he could put. It didn't take long before bullet wounds lettered his body. He was done yet though, as even when he was forced to drop his swords due to lack of strength, he still stood defiantly before disappearing in shave. Doberman appeared right behind Izuku and attempted to fire of a tempest kick, only to be met by Izuku's fist, who used the Nika fruit to stretch his arm and land the hit. The punch, while not having much force, did have enough to send him crashing into the hole Izuku had made earlier from the lockup. "Good work," Leonitis muttered as he landed next to him. "Now I'm sensing Brunhild on the far left while Gyro lolled down on the right where Dalmatian landed," Leonitis said as he used his hockey to sense the 2 vice admirals. "Right, I'll get Brunhild and you get Gyrolol," Izuku instructed, getting a nod from Leo. "Right, we can figure out our escape plan once we grab everyone," Leonitis proposed before heading off towards where his former vice admiral was being held. "Right now I just need to find Brunhild. Someone, I have no idea what she looks like," Izuku muttered before blinking and smacking his head even as the Marines surrounded him. "Duh, Izuku, just look for the one person you don't recognize," Izuku muttered before noticing he was now surrounded by Marines. "Do you mind? I'm kinda in the middle of something," Izuku requested, only to sigh as the Marines started to charge at him. "Gimme a break," he muttered before his body let out a pink sphere surrounded his body. "Slow sphere," he announced as the sphere shot outwards and then covered the Marines. The Marines seemed to come to a crawl as the sphere covered them. "Well, that should buy me the time I need," Izuku muttered before using the glare fruit to survey the furthest ship on the left. After a few seconds he smirked. "There she is," he muttered before heading towards the ship. With the powers of the float fruit and through fruit, he made it to where she was being held in seconds, and he finally got a good look at her. And despite the fact that her clothes were in tatters and she had some bruises, she was still appealing. Izuku approached her as the woman raised her head despite being chained to the wall. "Vice Admiral Brunhild?" Izuku asked, getting a hum from the woman. "Former Vice Admiral," she corrected with a nod, though she didn't sound that broken up about it. She then took the chance to look him up and down. "And I'm assuming that you're the one who is the cause of all this chaos that's going on outside?" she questioned, getting a nod from Izuku. "Guilty as charged. But me and Leo managed to break out and form our own crew," Izuku admitted, causing Brunhild to blink. "Admiral Leonitis is forming a pirate crew?" she questioned in disbelief, with Izuku actually grunting. "I'm actually forming it. Leonitis just decided to join up," Izuku admitted. Brunhild's expression instantly turned flat. "Yeah, I'm sure," she muttered, sarcasm heavy in her tone as she kept looking him over. "His hockey is tremendous, but that wouldn't be enough for Leo to join even if he was becoming a pirate," the former VA thought, having finished her estimate as dozens of Marines to appear with loaded guns aimed at them. "Well, there, Captain. Looks like some Marines are here. What are you going to do now?" Brunhild challenged as the soldiers armed and readied their guns. "Ready," the captain said as Izuku raised his hand. "Aim." The Marines put Izuku in their sights. "Fire." Bang bang bang, the room filled with smoke as bullets filled the air, with the smoke covering the room. Did we get him?" one of the Marines asked hopefully, only to give a groan as the smoke cleared and Izuku stood perfectly fine with a barrier in front of him. He's got devil fruit powers," the Marine cried, with the captain scowling darkly. "It's worse than you think, men. Apparently he has multiple powers." The captain revealed surprising and terrifying the Marines as well as Brunhild. Multiple fruits. Brunhild thought in disbelief as multiple small spheres of fire circled his back. And now will-o-wisp. Izuku thought, sending the fire forward, colliding and pouncing of the Marines, setting whatever they hit on fire. The Marines cried as they were forced to drop the weapons they were holding to put out the flames that ignited on their bodies, many throwing of their clothes when they went ablaze. Soon the Marines fled the room and Izuku turned back and headed for Brunhild's cell. That was unexpected, she said, as last once she was able to process someone have multiple fruits. However, she went on with narrowed eyes. That doesn't mean I joining you. She warned, only to blink as Izuku created a key to open her cell before he began to unshackle her. Never said you had to. Izuku muttered. Leonitis vouched for you and told me how you stood with him, Egghead and the celestial dragons, to help defend his home. That's all I needed to hear. Izuku said as he freed her from her final cuff. Now let's get out of here when we have the chance. Izuku suggested as he covered his arm in hockey and threw a punch, the shock wave tearing through the ship and giving them a path to freedom. Turning, he held out his hand. You coming? He asked, causing her to look at the hand for several seconds before smirking as she walked towards the hole as something grew out of her back. Human fruit, model, Valkyrie. Impressive. Izuku muttered, getting a grin from the older woman. Where do you think my Emphiot comes from? The Valkyrie asked. Now let's get out of here and dash. She was cut off as a burst of green energy erupted from the ship on the far right along with a thunderous roar. What the F is that? Brunhild asked, having to avoid being pushed back by the shockwaves. Izuku, however, was gaping in disbelief. Can't be. He muttered before flying towards the source. Wait a minute, what that? Answer me, damn it. Brunhild demanded, only to curse when Izuku flew ahead. With no other real choice at the moment and swearing profusely around her breath, Brunhild followed behind. All the while swearing to herself to make the kid tell her everything later. Line break. Please, Admiral Leonitis, stop this. We can work things out. You're only making things worse for everyone. Despite the pleas from his former comrades, Leonitis didn't slow down in the slightest, tearing through the ship to get to his second-in-command. He did stop briefly in the lockup to grab her weapons, which were now strapped to his back and wrapped in cloth. It was maybe 2 minutes at best before he finally reached where his hockey was telling him Gyrdalo was being held so, and with one final shoulder tackle smashed through the door. DMN it, Leo. Came the familiar irritated voice. Can you do anything without destroying something? She demanded, but there was clear amassment in her voice. Leo grinned at the question as he faced her. Yeah, well, I dash. However, whatever he was about to say died in his throat when he took in appearance. Her left eye swollen shut and her nose was clearly broken. She had cuts covering her body as well as scrapes and bruises with tears all her dress. Now Leonitis was no fool. He knew Gyrdalo had fought with him in the battle and knew she must have gotten hurt during the fight, but he had gotten a good look before they were separated, and she didn't look half as bad as she did now. Gear. He muttered as he began to shake, his fist clenching and unclenching as he tried to restrain his anger. The woman raised an eyebrow. The hell's eating you? She muttered before seeing he was glancing directly at her. Realization hit her and she actually started to snicker. Oh, you mean these love pumps those sacks of SHT gave me? She asked while giving a careless shrug. What can I say, guess they didn't appreciate us going rouge and were to PP to try and give you these lumps. She said. Pretty pathetic if you ask me. Nobody did you beach. Both former Admiral and Vice Admiral turned and saw a sound of about 20 Marines all glaring, eyes full of hate at the two with a Marine Rear Admiral at the lead. Oh look. Gear spoke with false happiness. The F pansies. She smirked while laughing as she saw veins started to grow on the heads of the Marines, something that Gear noticed. "Oh. Got something to say, pansies?" she asked, her smirk growing wider, causing the Rear Admiral to snarl. "Shut it, you traitorous beach." The Rear Admiral roared, not noticing the twitch going from the former Admiral as his eyes were locked firmly on Gear. "It's bad enough you turned your back on all your friends and allies for some worthless dogs that weren't even part of the government." Here veins truly started to grow on Leo's head at the way the man described his home. But to strike down the celestial dragons, the creators and rulers of this world, and then do the same to the good men and women who did what they should have done by standing and fighting against you, to punish you for your vile actions. The Rear Admiral continued, and now Gear was frowning as she noticed Leo's current state. The man was shaking so badly it looked like he was spazzing, his eyes dilated and filled with a maddening rage and an ominous green glow as drool started to fall from his lips as green lightning was sparking all over his body as the roaring was now echoing in his head like a drum. WAGGHH WAGGGHH WWWWAGGGHH WWWWWAGGGHH WWWWWAGGGHH. The roaring, now a thunderous chorus, each demanding for the Marines that dared harm his former Vice Admiral once the battle was done. The cult-like SHT spewing from the Rear Admiral's throats. "Oi, SHT stain," Gear muttered, taking another glance towards Leo. "You might want to cut the SHT now before it's too late." She tried to warn, having never seen a look on the older man's face, nor did she know anything about the green light glow or lightning. Unfortunately, the Rear Admiral, he didn't heed the Vice Admiral's advice, too lost in his ramblings and rants to notice the danger. "Shut your mouth, you worthless little beach. You're lucky we haven't been doing worst," he told the woman. "Gorging out your eyes, pulling out your teeth as well as your finger and toe nails. Hell, severing your tendons. These are just a few of the punishments I wish I could give you. And I would if not my devotion to absolute justice." Conqueror's hockey was radiating off Leonitis now as it seemed to mix with the green energy, causing the room to become severely damaged as a pressure was beginning to weigh on all of them. "Yes sir, please. That's enough," a lower-ranked Marine pleaded. "We need to stop Admiral Leonitis. He tired to reason with the deranged Marine only to get shot in the head by the real Admiral." "Shut up," he roared, terrifying the other Marines before he rounded back on the traitorous Marines and uttered the words that would seal their fates. "I do hope you enjoyed your stay with us, you beach. Because once we reach Impel Down, I'll ensure you're thrown into a cell bare but naked with the worst degenerates to do with you as the please. Because that is nothing than you deserve, you traitorous, worthless who dash." And that was when Leonitis reached his breaking point. The shout alone caused many of the Marines' ears to burst, causing them to drop to the ground as green energy shot through the ceiling, blasting most of it to bits and starting a fire that quickly spread through the ship. However, that was just the start of it as Leonitis let out another roar, and this time there was a flash of green light that forced everyone to shield their eyes, and once they could see again their eyes widened, Gears in shock and the Marines in horror. The reason being they weren't alone anymore. There were 5 of each group, and aside from 2 of the armored creatures who were heading to the prison cell to free Gear, were glaring murderously at the Marines as if waiting for the command to rip them to pieces. The Marines were cowering in their boots. The Rear Admiral included, but despite that he still managed to build his courage. "What are you all for? Hurry up and dash." The man didn't get to finish before Leo's spear flew through the air and tore through his face, splitting it in two and causing the man to drop dead to the floor. This seemed to be what the monsters were waiting for as they charged the now screaming Marines, who could do nothing as they were ripped apart. Whether by the shorts one knives, the swords of the bigger ones, or chopped apart with the axes of the monsters in armored, in less than 10 seconds the room had been painted red. "Leo," Gear muttered quietly while slowly approaching. The man was taking slow deep breaths as he tried to calm himself down as the monsters seemed to circle around them for protection. "Just give me a minute, Gear," he said between breaths. Holy SHT, the whisper drew everyone's attention, causing them to see Izuku and Brunhild flying in the air, both with looks of disbelief on their faces. The monsters growled and charged at the two as Leo and Gear were about to stop them. Stop! The calm command from Izuku brought them to a half as they came to a halt instantly. How did you do that? Brunhild demanded at once, looking just as confused and anxious as Gear felt. Izuku grunted softly. Because I can control them. These creatures are called greenskins and they're summons of the Gorkmork fruit. Izuku explained before a bewildered look came to his face. But that doesn't explain how they appeared. I didn't summon them, and if someone here had that fruit they would have used it by now. Izuku muttered as Gear pointed towards Leo. It was Leo. He was covered in this green energy, roared something, and these guys appeared. Gear explained as she was handed the keys to her cuffs by one of the goblins. Know how that's possible? She questioned as the cuffs dropped from her arms. Yeah. Izuku said, sounding stunned. But I don't know when or how it could have happened. Izuku muttered, looking away in thought. Unless it was we. Izuku muttered before shaking his head. Leo, roll up your sleeves and let me see your arms. Izuku requested. The aged admiral was confused at the request but nodded and did as he was asked. His left arm was clear, but when his right arm was shown there was a clear symbol on his arm. I knew it. Izuku muttered before pulling back and noticed the confused looks he was getting from the others. It's a long explanation that we don't have time for right now, but trust me Leo, this is nothing but a benefit for you. Izuku promised, causing Leonitis to smirk a moment later as he lit up a cigar he stole off a marine. Sure kid, but you owe me an explanation later. He told the younger man, who nodded. Of course, but for now we need to focus on getting out of here. Izuku reminded him as Gear walked over to the hole in the hole. I think I found our ride at least. She pointed out the smaller ship still following the warships. If we can hijack that ship and cause some chaos here, then we should be able to get out of here no problem. She reasoned. So does that mean you'll be joining us? Leo asked, and Gear raised an eyebrow as Brunhild sighed. Realizing that he hadn't actually explained anything to the Vice Admiral yet, he quickly said. Oh yeah. Izuku and me are becoming pirates. We busted you out in the hopes that you would join us, but that's not necessary. Leo told the woman, who blinked several times to process this information. Eventually she let out an annoyed sigh. Man, you really don't do anything half-butted, do ya? She muttered before glancing towards Brunhild. What about you? Going to be swashbuckling into the sunset? Brunhild just humphed. Haven't decided yet. But right now sticking with these two seem like the best way to get out of here. She rationalized. Despite the fact you can fly. She countered. Need I remind you that moonwalk exists? Brunhild shot back, and after a few seconds the shorter woman shrugged. Fair enough. She muttered before heading over to her former boss. Now look, I'm not saying I'm joining you idiots, but right now sticking together seems like the best option. Gear conceded as she reached the older man, who, knowing what she wanted, reached over his shoulder and handed the Vice Admiral her weapons. So for now I guess I can help you out. She muttered before she smirked as she undid the biddings. So what do you say we get the F out of here? She asked as she faced them, now holding two spears. Izuku let out a whistle. Nice. He muttered with a nod, with Gear smirking. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. She promised before pointing the spear in her left hand out the hole. A second later that swear shot out until it collided with the neighboring ship. The green skins clapped at the trick as Gear turned with a smirk. The reach fruit. By eating it my spear can now extend to incredible lengths. She explained before her grin turned thirsty. Now let's get the F out of here. She yelled before the launching out of the ship, cackling as she flew into the next ship ready to cause chaos. Brunhild rolled her eyes but smiled in amusement all the same as her wings appeared on her back. Don't take too long. she advised before taking to the skies and flying off. The tow men chuckled before facing each other. Well, what are we waiting for? Leonitis asked, his eyes once more glowing with green energy, the same that shined in the green skin's eyes. Let's get the F out of here.